Hey, thanks for stopping by today. Really excited about the video we got for you today. I've got a guest appearance here from my buddy Keith. Now, if any of you guys had saw my review of the Bradley smoker, I referenced Keith as one of my resources for trying to research and dig into what's the right smoker to get. And Keith and his family were up here visiting me here in Washington, all the way from Austin, Texas. And I talked him into showing us how to smoke a brisket in the Bradley digital smoker. And so Keith and his family have a long history in the smoked meat business. You guys have been doing smoked meats for what, since 1937?
37.
Family-run business called Shiner Smokehouse. Encourage you guys to go check it out if you want to learn more. But he's coming by and he's going to show us the best way to cook a brisket in the smoker, in the Bradley. So, couple of questions. First off is, what is different or the same? I mean, I don't know, right? What's from the traditional way? Because I know it's like when we've gone to your house and you break out the big old barrel smoker and all that kind of stuff, and you're throwing chunks of logs of wood and stuff on there, and you tin that sucker all day long, right?
Absolutely.
How is the Bradley different? I mean, I know it's got the set it and forget it sort of mode and everything, but I'm assuming that there's probably different techniques you have to do in the Bradley versus what you would do with a big drum smoker. So,
sure.
What are some of those differences?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it comes down to flavor, taste, and what do you want. Back in Texas, it's all about that natural wood. When you're barbecuing, you just can't beat natural wood, in my opinion. But time's not on your hands a lot of times, and that's why Bradley smoker is a great option for us, because it allows me to get some other things done. Now, obviously, tending a wood box, an actual natural fire, you're spending a lot of time. You're monitoring your temperature. You have greater opportunity for temp excursions, right, or different movements in temperature out of that box. So you've got to be near the fire. And you've got to have a good smoker to get some of those things done. Again, Bradley allows, kind of a set it and forget it type temperature and mode of doing things. So that's why I enjoy going to the Bradley, again, because time typically isn't of the essence for me these days, and it allows me to do something else. So.
Okay. So, maybe you can kind of walk us through what we need to do here with this brisket. So just for reference, guys, this is a 14-pound brisket, and so we're going to smoke this for...
So typically when you're smoking briskets, it's about maybe an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half per pound. So 14-pound brisket, that's going to be anywhere from 17, 18 hours to 21 hours. We're going to see how things go. It depends on temperature, outside temperature, some other things, how much fat's on the brisket. So, I mean, each brisket is just a little bit different, but good rule of thumb, hour 15 to hour and a half per pound.
Okay. And then, because we're doing this in the Bradley versus the wood box, as you're saying, I know we were talking about this earlier today, and, we're saying something about, the water and the moisture and stuff like that. What do we got to do to account for some of that?
Right. So, when you're smoking, period, you're going to lose moisture. You're going to lose moisture, meat volume, through the moisture through the meat. So, in the Bradley, it's good to have a water pan, a large water pan. So you have the large water pan to catch your coals, but also you want something in there, a larger pan with more water. Or some folks like to use apple juice or some other type of fruit juices. Water typically gets the trick done, and again, it's all about keeping moisture in the box. After smoking, probably about 6 hours until you get to about that 160 degree temp, that stall, you're going to lose a lot of moisture. So anything that you can do to keep water in that Bradley helps out and keeps moisture in the meat.
Okay. So, guys, why I'm really excited about this is because I actually did try and do a brisket on my own, and I completely screwed it up. So I'm really excited about kind of seeing how to do this right, and so I thought I would go ahead and capture this on video and record it so that you guys could see what we're doing as well. I did go out and start getting the oven preheated. So we're cooking it at 240, 245, something.
So we have the Bradley set at 240. We're going to cook most likely at about that 225, maybe up to 240. Once when you put the meat in, it's going to draw the box temp down. So we're going to be cooking at about 225 up to about 240 for the majority of the time.
Okay. So I got some extra water in there. I've got it preheating and stuff. I'm assuming we're supposed to preheat the oven. Is that?
Yeah. Have it set. Have it preheated, ready. Have the Bradley preheated, ready to go.
Okay. So we've already got that going. We're going to actually be smoking this overnight because we're going to eat this tomorrow night for dinner. And it's, you know, almost 11 o'clock. So we're starting it now. We're going to let it run overnight. Then we're going to check it in the morning, and you know, we'll come back for that portion of it in just a minute. But let's take a look at, you know, what do we need to do to prep this piece now?
Sure. Yeah, let's get to prep. Like Jay mentioned, this is a 14-pound brisket. Man, in that Bradley, you've got just a small window of room there. So typically I try to get a 10 to 12-pound brisket. Grocery store, when we went out hunting, this 14 pounds is what we had the option to get. So, you know, we do want to trim.
Just lots of leftovers.
We're going to have leftovers, right? That's for sure. Yeah, so we want to trim up just a little bit of this fat. You know, when you're out grabbing your packer brisket, one cool thing to do when you're grab that foil for me, you know, when it's in the pack, it's a little bit more a little bit tougher. But when you squeeze it like this, you want to see how much bend you have in that brisket. And that bend on that fat cap is kind of, if you've got more of that bend, that's when you know you got a good marbleized brisket. So we've got a great brisket here. Again, just a little bit on the heavier side than what we typically like to have in the Bradley. But so we're just going to trim just a little bit of this fat off, and then we're going to get to seasoning it. So we'll just start, you know, just looking around. There's just some excess fat here that, you know, we're not going to use. And you don't want to get all the way down to the meat. You just kind of want to get to the fat and just kind of trim it back. Like that. And I went just a little bit deep there and I got to the meat. I didn't want to go that far. If you notice here on the fat cap, that's probably a good, probably hard to see in the camera, but it's probably a good inch of fat. Now, I tell you, when, you know, some folks have their preference, you know, they have a preference of leaving it all on. For us, kind of time is of the essence for us in cooking this brisket, so we're just going to trim just a little bit off the top. Again, I'm not trying to take everything off. I just want to get maybe about a 1/4 inch peeled back off that brisket.
Okay, so you got the fat trimmed off, and so what do we do next?
All right, so next is seasoning. So Texas, we love our dry rubs. I know I do. We're in the great state of Washington right now. Thanks for your hospitality. Family's enjoying the time out here, but you know, we're cooking a Texas style brisket, so we're going to talk about dry rub. And you know, everyone again has their way of doing things. You know, what we like to do is use mustard, your typical mustard. We'll spread mustard all around the entire brisket, cover it. You know, people might be at home might be thinking, you know, why mustard? Well, is that going to be a weird taste? The taste of mustard burns off. The only point of mustard is to hold your seasoning down. Hold your seasoning to the meat as you're transferring and moving things around. And as the fluids and juices start to come out of the meat, that mustard helps the seasoning bond to the outside of the brisket.
So we're just using regular French's yellow mustard, you know, contact French's for a 0% discount, and you know, and the other option was going to be to use molasses. Is that?
Yeah. So folks use molasses as well. Again, just you know, it's all about keeping the seasoning to the meat. Think about molasses. Molasses has a higher, you know, cook temp, so it does add a little bit of a flavor profile to the brisket. But you know, standard mustard is just fine.
Now I'm going to say that, you know, we are using a dry rub from a restaurant chain. This isn't the Shiner Smokehouse stuff. That's because Keith didn't know he was going to be doing this when he was coming. I sort of ambushed him and convinced him to do this video while he was here.
You twist my arm into cooking a brisket, I'll do it anytime.
So he didn't bring any of the Shiner Smokehouse with him because he didn't know he was going to do this. Otherwise, we would be using the you know, your guys' special recipe of stuff. So We're working with something else today, but you know, I think it's still going to come out pretty good.
Right on. All right, well, let's get started. No special science to this. Pretty easy. Be about as liberal as you like on the mustard. I'm going to save some for the other side.
That's a yellow brisket.
That is a yellow brisket. Crazy, right? Be sure to get the sides as well, because you do want seasoning along the sides. You want seasoning all over your brisket.
And so, as I said, we're going to cook this for approximately 21 hours. We're actually going out on the side-by-side tomorrow, so we're gonna smoke it all night tonight to get the first half of the smoke done. We'll start it before we take off in the morning to go ride the side-by-side, and I'll get some videos of that and stuff as well and post that for anybody that's interested. And we're going to let this thing smoke all day tomorrow as well, and then when we get back, hopefully dinner will be nice and ready, but we'll capture all the steps in between as well.
Great. You gonna grab the seasoning since my hands are full of mustard.
You want to just shake it on?
Yeah, shake it on and be about as liberal as you like theirs too. When it comes to seasoning for a brisket, cake it on. There's really you can't put too much of this stuff on. I'm going to take some, and that'll be good for now.
Have it out.
I'm going to move some down to the sides. All right, and typically good to let this rest just for a moment. That way all the moisture can suck down the seasoning and really congeal and
yeah, I really screwed up the last one because I didn't do any of that.
That's all right. Briskets are fickle. You know, you cook one brisket, you've cooked one brisket, and they all don't work the exact same way. Once we get in there and start checking the temp and start working, things can change. It might, instead of that 21 hours that we're anticipating, we might finish out in 17 hours. We might finish out in 15 hours. We don't know. But we just have a general rule of thumb, is that hour 15 to hour and a half.
So are we going to put, because I do have a thermal probe that it's like when I do the reverse sear on the steaks. Are we going to pop that thermal probe in here and monitor the internal temperature of the meat as well? And is that how we're going to tell we're done? Or?
Right. So temperature, and we're going to cover this a little bit later as we're working through some of the next steps. But when I'm working with the Bradley smoker, I like to pop the meat probe in, because I don't want to go in and out of that door any more than I have to. So I prop the meat probe in, let the wire come through the door, unless if you have a fancy wireless one.
No,
I don't.
I got the wired one.
Right, all right. So I just leave it outside. But I don't want to go in and out. You lose all of your heat.
Okay.
And with working with the Bradley electric heat, it takes a little bit to come back up. You can't throw, some small logs on a fire and move the heat quick.
Okay.
So it takes a lot of time. So you want to keep that door shut as much as possible.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and flip, and then we're gonna pop some more. Hold it full. We're gonna work the other side. Now this is the meat side, and you'll slowly but surely start to see the dryness in the seasoning turn into a wet seasoning. So once you know all of that, once you see the drier seasoning turn to a wet mush, yeah, that's when you know
consistency.
That's when you know it's ready to get out to the smoker. So
okay,
we'll let that set a little bit longer.
Okay. And then from there it's just put the probe in, start it going, and let it run. Now, how because I know when I do the ribs, I smoke for like 3 hours, and then I cook for another 2 or 3. So I'm only smoking like half the time. Are we smoking again like half the time? Or are we smoking all the time?
So again, goes back to preference. For me, in the first 6 hours really is when you're going to catch all of the smoke. Your brisket's going to soak up as much of the smoke as it possibly can in those front 6 hours. So, for the initial 6 hours, I'm running smoke the entire time. On that Bradley, when I'm cooking in the winter, I like to run smoke the entire time, because it gives me just a little bit more heat on that heating element as well.
Okay.
But after that first 6 hours, once you get to about 160 degrees, once you get to that stall point, the infamous stall, 160 degree stall point.
What is the stall point?
So when you're cooking a brisket, you got to get your temp. When your finished temperature for brisket, is 195. Typically, when you want to pull it, while you're inching up, while your heat's moving up, when you get to 160, is when the meat is working hard to break down and you move past that 160 mark. So it takes a little while to get there. And it could take an hour, it could take 3 hours, it could take 5 hours. It just really depends on the fat and the meat in your brisket. So that stall, a lot of times people make the mistake of, man, I'm not getting past the stall. Ramp up the heat and let the heat really, just overcook it and burn it. Don't do that. Stay patient, work through that 160. If you keep your temperature static at that 225 to 240 mark, it'll move past that 160. There's no guaranteed science or guaranteed time to when it will happen, but typically that 6 hour mark is when you're most likely going to get to it, right around it.
Okay, so it's 11 o'clock at night now. So we're gonna smoke this, or we're gonna run this until like 8 in the morning or something before we get ready to leave, and then check it. Then is that kind of like the next checkpoint? Yeah,
next checkpoint. We'll probably pop out there at 7 o'clock. Go take a look at it.
Okay.
If it's 11 o'clock now, if we actually get it on at 11:30, probably 7.
Okay.
About 7 o'clock, we'll come out and take a look at it. Take a look at the temperature meat probe to see where we're at.
Okay. So then it's starting to look like it's starting to get there. Still a little bit of dry spots, but
that's fine.
And then do you put it in fat side up, right? So that the fat, as it breaks down, the moisture goes into the meat?
Spot on. Right on.
Okay. I did that right then.
Yeah, exactly. and it's barbecuing is like anything else. Everyone has their opinions or a way how to get things done. I'm a fat side up type of guy, and I've just had the best success with briskets doing it fat side up.
Okay.
Some folks even score the fat, and I didn't do it here. When I'm using molasses, I typically score it. I just feel like that molasses kind of soaks into that fat a little bit more, and there's some flavor there. But more so, you're trying to get the seasoning down in there, but you're opening up an opportunity or an avenue for that smoke to get through as well.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but we've got the oven timer set for, we started it at 9 hours and 39 minutes. That's the most it would go. I've got the oven temperature set at 240. When we put the brisket in, the oven temperature was at 239, and then we opened the door and that let a lot of heat out. So it's right now down to 219, and so it's going to take a little bit of time to build back up. And Keith, if you want to open the door, we'll show the inside real quick. So you can see what we've got going on here is I've got on the bottom shelf, I've got a pan to catch the coals full of water. Then I've got a rack in there with the bowl with more water, and then above that we've got the brisket. So that's the setup, and we're gonna now put the biscuits in to start smoking it.
All right, so we made a quick mistake. We didn't pop the meat temp in, so we're gonna go ahead and pop the thermometer in now. We didn't lose a lot of heat because we caught it right away. We're just gonna go ahead and pop it in, kind of to the fattest part of the meat, and just get it in there to where we're kind of in the middle of the meat. So we're just loading the Bradley biscuits here. We've got 18 hickory biscuits. Hickory mesquite are my favorite to cook with. When I'm cooking chicken and pork, I like some of the other apple or cherry wood, but we're doing brisket, so hickory is our choice here.
So now we're going to set up the smoke time. And so you're setting it for...
I'm setting as high as it can go.
So 9 hours and 40 minutes.
Got it.
So that should go through all the biscuits then, because we've got enough there to smoke for 6 hours. So it's going to keep the heating element going in to throw, even though there's no wood on there.
Correct. Even though there's no biscuits running through, it's still going to keep that additional heat going through the heating element.
Right.
It's in those first 6 hours, you just put a cold brisket in the smoker in the cabinet, so temperature is going to drop like we saw it in the beginning, and it's going to continue to drop. So that additional heat is going to help bring it up and then keep it stable.
Okay. And then the other thing you had me do is pull the brisket out so that it was at room temperature instead of straight from the fridge.
Yeah, we had it set out for a little over an hour. You don't want to really sit it out all day to get to room temperature. Probably about an hour before. It helps just bring down the temperature, and it's not straight out of the refrigerator.
All right, good morning, guys. It's about 7:20, 7:30. We slept in a little bit late. We're coming to check the temperature. You can see the box temp is currently at 230. Remember, we set it at 240 overnight, and this is one of those things that we talked about. Depending where you are and where you're cooking, what your actual box temperature can get to or not. So we're at 230. We've been sitting there since 11:30 last night, and when we're checking out the probe temp, we're seeing 174. So remember, last night we were talking about that stall point. Typically at around 140 degrees to 160 degrees is where you'll typically experience that stall point. So kind of cool right now. We're above that, and we're moving relatively quick. So what we're going to do, we're going to open this up, check our water. We're probably going to move the meat probe to another spot in the meat, just to verify temperature as well, and then take it from there. We're going to make a decision since it looks like we might not leave the house today, so we're probably going to stick around as opposed to leaving. So we might leave this open and unwrap it, especially since how fast we move on the temperature. Remember, a reason to wrap it is to help to get you past that stall point. So we're already past it. I feel like we're past it. So we're going to check it out, and we'll get back to you here what we decide to do. So everything's looking great. Go ahead and remove the probe. Stick into another spot right around
And then the water pans. Bottom one looks dry. Top one, it's got a bunch of drippings in it, but it's still quite a bit of water.
All right, so after checking everything out and looking at the temperature, remember we repoked the temp probe to another spot in the meat since we had left it there overnight. It didn't move much. We were sitting at 174 when I moved it, and it moved down to 171. So we're staying static. If we'd have seen it drop significantly, we may have looked at a different option. But again, since we're going to be here for the day and we're past what we would call that typical temperature range for that stall point, we're going to go ahead and leave this unwrapped. Some people make a choice here. If you want to wrap it, wrapping it helps you get past that stall point a little bit quicker. It helps contain that heat. But what ends up happening is, your meat texture and your taste ends up getting towards more of like a stewed meat, if you will, because you're trapping all of that moisture. But again, since we're going to be here all day, and we like the crispy bark, we like the crispy edges, crispy bark, we're going to leave it unwrapped. Again, totally preference. It depends on the pit masters themselves. So what they like to do. We're going to go ahead and leave it unwrapped. We're going to add some water. Our water pans were getting dry, so we're going to go ahead and add that water just to help on moisture for the rest of the smoke. All right, so since we're going to continue moving here, remember we set the timer for as long as it could go last night, 9 hours, 40 minutes. We're going to reset it again for just another 9 hours, 40 minutes. Again, we're going to be here to monitor this all day, so I just want to put as much time on the temp so that we can keep an eye on it. We're watching it as we go throughout the day. So, all right, so one other thing that we want to check is the temperature to the back. So the heating elements on the Bradley are sunk to the back of the cabinet, and so that heat rises towards the back of the cabinet itself. So what we want to check and do, so noting that the temperature was 171 on the thickest part of the meat in the front, we want to go ahead and flip the fatter part of the meat, the thicker part of the meat.
Rotate it around.
Rotate it to the back, yeah. All right, so we're at about 12 and a half hours. Jay just came out and checked the temp, and we're sitting at 199 degrees. Ideally, I'd like to have pulled it at 195 and then wrap it, but time got away from us. But after 12 and a half hours, this brisket's moved along really fast. Well below the hour and a half typical average time frame. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at it. We're gonna poke the thermometer in another section of the meat, just to make sure that you know, we're capturing the temperature accurately. All right.
Now we're going to see if this thing moves at all. Now this is not an instant read thermometer, so you know, it may take a few seconds to get caught up here, but
not seeing it move much at all. Again, we set the box at 240. Average cook temp has been at 230 pretty much the entire time, but now the meat, after you get past the stall point, then the box temperature will start to rise a little bit. So that's why we're up to about 237. So we'll go ahead and pull it. I think it's staying static at that 198. So we're going to go ahead and pull it and bring it inside and wrap it in foil, and then wrap that in a towel and place it in a cooler for it to rest. All right, so we went ahead and pulled it. Internal temp was 196. And some of the fatter parts, and then some of the thinner parts about right at a 199, 200. So we can go ahead and pull it and go ahead and wrap it. The heat's going to continue to rise. Again, we pulled this just a tick late. I'd like to get it out at 195. We'll go ahead and wrap it in foil, and then we're going to wrap it in our towel as well, and then place it into a cooler to redistribute the moisture and the juices of the meat.
and it's pretty important, even though that looks really good and I want to just dive into it right now, you know, it's pretty important to let it rest so that the moisture gets, you know, saturated throughout the entire thing, right? So you just have to be patient and not let your desire to dig into the meat get to you.
Don't rush the process.
Okay, it's time for the unveiling. We've let it rest. We actually let it rest probably 6 hours.
Yeah, probably about 6 hours, yeah.
Because we ended up taking off for part of the day, went to do a little bit of sightseeing after it was done cooking. This cooked finished up way faster than we thought it was going to be. And so, you know, we did wrap it up, put it in the cooler and let it rest, and we're now just pulled that out. And so we're gonna see how it came out. I'm gonna let you do the honors.
Alrighty.
Big fork.
Flip that over.
Looks tasty, smells really good. Holy cow, that's really good.
Nothing like the ends, right?
Really, really good. Very tender, still very moist.
Everything redistributed pretty nice.
And it just kind of falls apart.
You still have a good fat content.
And kind of
Nice bark.
really fall apart, very tender. Much better than the last time. Last one was like eating leather, man. It was terrible.
Well, hopefully we did a little better here.
Yeah, we did a lot better. This is the way you get it when you do it, when you actually do it right. So there you have it. There's how you cook a brisket with the Bradley smoker. I'm assuming that a lot of this is the same as if you did this on a tinderbox, right? But you made some slight adjustments specifically for the Bradley, right?
Correct. And just like anything, if you're cooking in a typical barrel smoker or a Bradley, you make adjustments as you go. We noticed that the temperature got up to that 170 way faster than what we expected. So we didn't help it along. We didn't wrap it to kind of get over that. Just so some of those minor adjustments that you make along the way, you just kind of wing it. And I tell you one thing, I've smoked a lot of briskets and not one of them's been the same. You can apply a lot of the same techniques, a lot of the same ideas, but everyone's just a little bit different, and they're all fun in their own right.
Well, this came out really good. Everybody, thanks for watching. If you got any questions, comments, please post them below. Happy to answer what I can, and what I can, I'll reach out to Keith and get the answers for you. Also encourage you to swing by Shiner Smokehouse. Check out their website. These guys have been smoking meats and sausages and all sorts of stuff since 1937. So they got a ton of experience. They got a lot of great products. So go check them out. And thanks for watching.
Thanks.